Hello, welcome back to Broyhill on Aviation Leadership. This is the third installment of the Leadership Traits series, as covered in detail in the book you see there to your lower left, Business Aviation Leadership from the Traits to the Trenches. Today's installment is about the very important leadership trait of communication. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Communication, like the traits we've previously discussed, has a pretty straightforward, strict definition. It's merely a process by which information is exchanged between individuals using a common system of symbols, signs, or behaviors. But is that all there is to it? Probably not. From time to time, as we go through this series, I'll recommend other leadership books for your personal library. And here's one you shouldn't be without. This is John C. Maxwell's The 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader. As you can see, we can define communication very easily, but we can't overstate its importance for leaders. Maxwell agrees. The fourth chapter of his book is entitled Communication. Without it, you travel alone. And on the very first page of that chapter, he quotes Gilbert F. Amelio, a former CEO of the National Semiconductor Corporation and even a CEO of Apple for a time. Amelio says this: developing excellent communication skills is absolutely essential to effective leadership. The leader must be able to share knowledge and ideas to transmit a sense of urgency and enthusiasm to others. If a leader can't get a message across clearly and motivate others to act on it, then having a message doesn't even matter. So communication is everything to leadership. When I conducted the survey research, I tried to capture the essence of communication in a leadership perspective merely as keeps me informed. As you can see, both leaders and followers rated the trait of communication fairly high. The overall mean was 5.98, and the followers came in at 6.03, the leaders at 5.96. Now you would be tempted to say, hey, the followers think it's more important than the leaders, but you look at the result of Levine's test for variance and you can see from a statistical perspective, those means are identical or the same. So they're aligned, both leaders and followers, from a rating perspective. But what about a ranking perspective, where I asked the respondents to rank the traits from 1 to 3? You can see there's a slight disparity. Leaders rated the trait fourth after empowerment, whereas followers ranked at number 3. So a little bit of a misalignment there, but not much. So let me provide you a different perspective on the trait of communication. In a former life, I was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. You can see some of the jets on the wall there behind me. I flew the A-10, I flew the F-16, flew the OV-10 Bronco for a while before both of them. In the fighter pilot world, communication has a unique spin. And that's very simply this. You brief a flight, 2 guys, 4 guys, maybe more if there are trainees in the group. You go out and fly, and then you come back and you shut the door. And we used to call that sacred time. The rank comes off the flight suit. You're no longer a lieutenant colonel or major or a captain or a lieutenant. You're all fighter pilots. And it's no holds barred in debriefing the flight. So even when I was a lieutenant colonel and I would lead flights at Luke Air Force Base with students in them, when I came back and shut the door and the debriefing was on, it was a no holds barred environment. And I could have lieutenants or captains telling me things that I had screwed up while I had flown the mission or while I had led the mission. And there was no quarter for your feelings. There was no quarter for presentation. Some people did it more tactfully than others, but the bottom line is you heard what they had to say, and you didn't let your network of issues or baggage interfere. If you wanted to be better as a fighter pilot, you heard what they said, you took notes, you amended the way you did things, and you got better. And this has been was a staple of my entire career in the Air Force. I was checked out as a mission commander. I've led like 40 to 50 airplanes into simulated combat before. You lead a mission like that, and you come back when it's over, and not only do you hear it from a room full of folks, a small briefing room full of folks, you hear it from an entire room full of folks, down to the last nitnoid detail. Probably the most exemplary time that I can remember is when I was going through fighter weapons school in the A-10. And sometimes I'd be flying a mission, leading a mission with 3 instructor pilots on my wing. And they would take copious notes about every single thing I did wrong, which is a pretty darn impressive task in the A-10 at that time because there was no lasty in it, and that meant no autopilot. So they were hand flying and taking notes while staying on my wing and doing the other things that we were doing together. So we would come back into those debriefs, the door would shut, and I would hear every last little detail of what I did wrong. And some things that I might have even done right once or twice. The point is that you didn't let your feelings get in the way. You didn't let your emotions get in the way. Instead, you were focused on the mission. You were focused on getting better. So now that we're in a corporate environment, a business aviation environment, and we receive seminars on how to coach people well and how to communicate in a manner that empowers them and which inspires them, we can't employ the same tactics that I was exposed to in the Air Force. But we can employ the same spirit. And by that I mean, as leaders, we should invite criticism and we should invite critique and allow our personnel to communicate it to us in a manner that is open. And we should be focused on the mission, what we can do as leaders to get better. So we should be actively listening to what they have to say and not let our guard or our feelings get in the way. And correspondingly, when we communicate with our subordinates, we need to do so directly but tactfully. Clear is kind, but the clearness needs to be packaged in a way that it inspires. And we all need to stay focused on the mission or the purpose of what we're doing and not let other things get in the way. So I guess what I'm trying to say with all of this, when you focus on the mission, you can do the right thing from a communication perspective. Thank you for tuning in to this third installment of the Leadership Traits series. If you hit the subscribe button down there at the bottom, you'll be sure not to miss any of the other installments that will come your way. There'll be 12 more in the series, and then there'll be a wrap-up after that one, in which we'll talk about how they all work together. You can see the book there to the lower left, Business Aviation Leadership from the Traits to the Trenches. If you get that book, remember all proceeds from that book go to the Leadership Conference Scholarship Fund, so nobody's making any money on it. But in that book are numerous stories from leaders in our industry about how they've employed the different traits we'll discuss and the luck they've had with them as a result. So, thanks again for your attention. Hope you're able to shelter in place or stay healthy during this COVID-19 business that we're going through now. My best to you and yours, and stay tuned for the next installment. In the meantime, tailwinds to all of you.